Thank you very much. And we will have a PowerPoint. And first of all, I want to thank again Professor von Braun for inviting me here. But honestly, now I feel a little bit humbled. And after having discussed a very, very important, and I thank everyone for this very interesting discussion, I will go now to something that is slightly more technical. And even though, as Professor Hassan said, I work for the Statistics Division under Maximo Torero, I want to clarify that I'm here presenting a prospect of a researcher, of a scientist, of a person that is involved in one branch of social statistics, social sciences, which is statistics, to actually respond to the solicitation that Pope Francis made, and is one of the reasons we are here, to remember that any strategy should have at the heart the people, and that people are not numbers, are not data, are not endless statistics. And so I decided to devote my few minutes and the paper that I have presented to discuss an ethical issue related to statistics, particularly related to social sciences, and on the one aspect where I believe that social science has not kept the pace with natural science, with biological science, which is the issue of measurement. So in this sense, what I aim at is to issue a warning that we might be dealing with numbers that are presented to the general public with an aura of objectivity, of scientific reliability, which may not. But I'm also here to offer a solution. And the solution is that innovation in the field of measurement applied to social statistics has provided some way to improve the validity and the reliability of the numbers that we see. So let me start by giving a little bit of an historic perspective. FAO has been reminded by Ms. Bertini, by others, was actually created with one fundamental mandate to monitor the state of food security and nutrition in the world. And has done it over the many years, looking mostly at data available on food production, food trade, and later on also on food consumption. And I think we are very good in monitoring food production, monitoring trade. Maximo presented very interesting statistics. Where we are not really being able to is to pinpoint on who the people are who suffer from hunger. So even though on a general setting we can address issues of estimating the percentage of undernourishment, where we are not so good is to identifying who within a population is undernourished, why, where to target intervention. And this is just a quote that Mr. Bill Gates, this was at the beginning of the SDG agenda, revealed that many people didn't understand why FAO does what it does and do not rely instead on what seems the obvious approach. Take a large sample of people, determine how many aren't eating enough. And actually, I won't go much into detail. The paper contains more. But the reason why FAO does what it does is to recognize that there is a fundamental difference between diversity in the human population and inequality that affect the human population. And this is the challenge that we have to face in statistics, not to confound the two elements. And unfortunately, looking at food consumption data, it's difficult to disentangle how much of insufficient food consumption may be because of choices or because of lower requirement of food. People are not all alike in their requirement. So, and I will say this is the reason why what we do appears to be much complicated. And this is why we deal very carefully with the data to make sure not to be biased by measurement error. And the driving concept, principle, is actually, this is a quote from Carver 3, who say that when reasoning about subject, it's better to be vaguely right than precisely wrong. And this is the problem, that statistics sometimes is presented as presenting precision when it's impossible to have precision. Now, we were well aware that the global statistics that we do are not enough to guide action. And the situation in 2012 was very clear that we don't know how severe is hunger and how is this. And that led to a host of initiatives. One most important is the one that WFP took in devising simplified method to collect food consumption data. And this is from the manual that presents how the food consumption score is computed, starting from the point that measuring food consumption of people is very difficult. But then they presented a very simple method to compute a score based on food consumption data that can be collected relatively simply in a survey. And so it's just a technique, a procedure that allows to attach numbers to households with the hope that these numbers reflect the food consumption of people. And I want to say we shouldn't underestimate the importance of scrutinizing these numbers, because these numbers are very popular today. Very recently, the WFP has presented the World Hunger Map, where this is the landing page, and in the landing page, the statistics that is presented first is the percentage of insufficient food consumption, which is obtained using food consumption score data. And they admit that when creating these simple ways to compute statistics, one has to make some subjective choices, for example, about the weight, etc. Now, why I'm saying that? Because the practice of trying to simplify, guided by the feasibility objective, to do something that can be done easily in the field, it's very much remindful of the discussion on measurement that has happened in other fields of social statistics. And I want to report this statement by Joel Mitchell, who is a scholar who has been working a lot on studying the problem of measurement in psychology, because I think the same statement, mutatis mutandi, could be applied to food security statistics. So, guided by a mixture of Pythagoreanism, so the idea that everything can be measured, and operationalism, that we need to do something in practice, psychologists have devised a wide range of procedures that generate numerical data. And even if they did not know exactly what they're measuring, they could be confident that because these procedures resulted in numbers, they must be measuring something. And I would say this describes very well what, for example, in constructing the food consumption score has been followed. Let's get to a procedure to produce numbers. These numbers must mean something. And now, this is the ethical part. The ethical part is that that's not enough. If we produce numbers, if we publish statistics which carry an aura of rigor objectivity, this is what science is about, we need to know what is being measured and how reliable are these figures. And that's why I'm just presenting some slides to show that what the food consumption score measures is not clear. These are scatter plots of food consumption score against levels of caloric consumption in the same household. So each dot is a household in a circle. And these are being used to claim that the food consumption score is a good proxy of food consumption, but honestly, I don't think this makes the point. Quite the contrary. And this is true everywhere. Another very difficult thing to understand is these are series of two indicators currently presented through the World Hunger Map. This is the percentage of people with insufficient food consumption and the percentage of people that make recourse to emergency coping strategy in the same population. This is the Niger province of Nigeria. And these are two indicators that are presented as indicators of food security, but clearly there must be something different because they point into different time factors. And one may say, okay, but more or less they have the same level. But then you go in another province, the same indicator actually point to very different levels. So the truth is we don't know exactly which is the underlying attribute that these indicators are capturing. And we should invest into improving in the way in which we can validate measures and assess how reliable they are. And this is where, in a sense, I also want to send a message of hope that progress has been made in defining approach theories to measure social relevant attributes, which are often mental constructs. These are not physical objects. Measuring the food insecurity of people is not as simple as measuring the weight or the height of an individual. So we can now, thanks to the innovations that have been produced, particularly in the pedagogy, the educational testing, and then in clinical psychology, we can do what Benjamin Wright used to say, which is teach people how to transform the pieces of information that they have into proper measures. And this is what we do. In order to measure something in the social science, we cannot avoid to present a model that links what we can observe, which is our data, with the thing that we want to measure. And this can be done only in probabilistic terms because the thing that we want to measure is not something that we can touch and observe. Now, I will skip the technicality. It's in the paper if you want, but essentially this can be done through the Rush model, which is a model that allows to obtain proper quantitative measures starting from essentially qualitative information that is contained in the data we collect. And again, for sake of time, I want to go fast. The Rush model is what informs the food insecurity experience scale. The food insecurity experience scale, Maximo referred to it earlier, is a measurement system for the severity of food insecurity that can be applied globally. And we benefited for almost 30 years of cumulated experiences. I was very pleased to hear about the work of BRAC in Bangladesh, was one of the first institutions using the HFIAS, which is a close germane to the FIES. And we have been able now to offer a survey-based tool in which we ask a number of simple questions to people, and we can use it to produce comparable classification in all over the world. And so now we are also very happy that this approach has been recognized and is being more and more used, not only to produce the statistics that FAO, WFP, IFAD, WHO, and UNICEF produce in the SOFI report, but also by countries themselves who use similar tools to monitor food insecurity domestically at much greater scale within the country. And the message that I wanted to send to the scientific profession that is engaged, including in food security measurement, is that this same principle, analytic principle, can be applied to improve the analysis of existing data, like food consumption data that continues to be collected. Thank you for your attention, and sorry for